Welcome to Redefining Real Estate. I'm Rylan.
And I'm Morgan. Expect a mix of education, humor, and authentic conversation as we explore all things real estate.
Let's jump into today's episode.
What is one thing you thought was going to be easy about real estate that turned out to be way harder?
Okay, that's like such a loaded question, but I think the biggest thing that was like that kind of hit me like a truck.
Yeah.
When I first started as like a solo agent, like not on a team or anything, the hardest thing was just finding like genuine people that like actually needed help and that you could actually like work with. It wasn't like there was just clients just everywhere. You had to like just find some sort of way to just like find people that like want to work with you. And that was like for me definitely like the hardest thing was just trying to find people that like actually needed help.
So you're saying there's this misconception basically in real estate when you get into it that like, you know, people are going to be calling your phone just because you work for XYZ brokerage or because you're an agent. Like in general, people are just going to be reaching out to you versus like the other way around, pretty much.
For sure. Whenever I first joined that brokerage, they pretty much told me that. They're like, you know, you will have people that call you up just because, you know, you're licensed. And I was like, sweet, you know. Mm-hmm. And I never really understood how realtors found clients. I just know that realtors had clients. So I wasn't like super concerned about finding those people or what that process looks like. And that definitely was like the like biggest thing for me, without a doubt. But yeah, like was that kind of your experience too, or like what'd you find?
Well, so to clarify, you started at a different brokerage. We weren't always on the same team.
For sure. Yeah.
Whenever I started in real estate, I've always been with the Stewart and Jane group. And I started doing it part-time because like I thought it was just going to be one of those things that I could have as a side hustle and just make a ton of money, like make more money than my day job and eventually quit. But that was not the case at all. I mean, I experienced what you experienced, but I think I thought that I had some sort of advantage because I know you're not from the area, but
right.
I grew up here and I thought, well, I have friends and family that, you know, they have to be interested in buying a home or they have to know someone who might be interested in buying a home. And so obviously, like, they're just going to reach out to me because they know I'm an agent. And that was not the case either. So, yeah, I mean, that first year, I think a lot of my business almost all of my business either came from me, like, intentionally reaching out to people on social media and or you know, like getting leads through the team, like, you know, when people inquire on our website and then we follow up with them. But those are a lot longer term nurtures is what we call them, right? They come into our system and like, they're not ready to buy tomorrow. They are thinking about it, but they're not quite sure how to get there.
Right. Yeah. So that first year, did you have anyone that like within your sphere of influence, like did anybody kind of like think about using you or say yes or no? Like, what was your experience there?
Man, I'm trying to think back. It feels like so long ago. So the first year that I had my license, like I said, I was part-time for a majority of it. And I did, like, no deals that full first year. I mean, I helped people with leases, which, like, my friends, they were leasing at the time. I was in my early 20s, so, like, that was a lot more attainable for me.
For sure.
But I'll count my actual first year as like my second year being licensed, which is when I like quit my job and went full time.
Right.
And I did have some family members, like my grandpa. He did use me to help sell his property. Okay. But he ended up buying a house off market, and he did not use me for that, obviously, because it wasn't listed.
For sure.
But it was like, you know, people still used me because they knew and trusted me, but it wasn't like I don't think they saw me as like the expert in the field yet.
For sure.
And that was something that I had to go through growing pains to actually get to, because I think now I've kind of shown everybody in my life that like I do obviously know what I'm doing. Like I've done over 40, 50 deals at this point.
For sure.
So I think I am kind of seen as an expert now, but that was definitely one of my struggles as well. Is like, you know, finding business in general, and even though you may know someone, like the likelihood of them knowing another realtor is so high that gaining their business is more than just like, hey, can I help you? Like you have to actually nurture that relationship and provide value to people.
Yeah, and plus too, I mean, I don't know about your family, but within mine, like there's other people involved in real estate. So like more of just texting them was like, hey, like, just letting you know I'm also licensed. Like if you have any like referral business or vice versa, like we can maybe try and help each other out. Nothing as of yet, but that wasn't like a super big deal. But it's also something I think that could be like, spoke on as far as like your family may know other realtors and your family may also be some sort of involvement in real estate and they may already have connections too. So yeah, it's hard because you don't want to like be like some like hard salesman to your family all of a sudden, but yeah, definitely a difficult thing to overcome.
Yeah, shout out to my mom because she's the one who got me into real estate. She's a part-time realtor. So, yes, it is difficult in my family, especially with, certain family members because obviously it's like almost like you have to choose between the two of us.
Right.
But I do this full time now, so it's like this is how I support my family and like how I make my money.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like that's my mom.
So yeah, right.
There's just like a different dynamic there, and so yeah, it can be difficult, especially like if she has like if she wants to refer me a client that's interested in one of her listings. Like, okay, we have to explain to the client, yes, this is my mom, but I'm not like. She'll probably be harder on me than any other agent could possibly be in this industry because of that reason.
Right.
It wouldn't be the other way around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do have some other family members that are in real estate in other areas, and I haven't gotten any referrals from them yet. But you never know what might happen.
You never know. It's always good to have a connection for sure. But yeah,
Yeah.
you never really know what it will actually like amount to.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. So what are the other things that you feel like you thought would be easy, but ended up being way harder?
learning all the steps to the home buying process. I had no idea that there was 50 million things that are going on at the same time. When I first started as a solo agent, all I wanted to do was just be taught from looking at houses to getting your keys. Like, just tell me what that is, because I used to hold the same open house Saturday, Sunday for like months, and everyone would always ask these questions, and they were pretty much either like, about the house or something within the home buying process. And I just didn't really know how to answer their questions. So I always had to pull like, yeah, if you just want to like leave your number, I'll check that out and get back with you, which I didn't really love doing because I felt like, it's non-professional. Like, I feel like I should know these answers. And whenever I went like looking for them, like I just could not figure out what was going on between like submitting an offer and, closing. So that was something that was super like difficult off the start. Obviously now learned it, and it's like a lot more approachable of a process now. But like for a first like a month, 2 month, 3 month as being a realtor, like I didn't really know, what was what. And I was kind of just working. I said, I'll figure it out as I go. And that's just how it's going to be. But there was another agent there that like told me she created this huge like checklist of things. And she said there was over like 100 something items that had to be like done. And whenever I asked her for it or just like some tips, like nothing really.
She never gave it to you.
Yeah, nothing really amounted from that question either. So she wasn't very, understanding of my position or wanting to help too much, just to let me know that she had something. I don't know. It was weird. But yeah, that was a big thing for me, was just learning timelines, different things, like what different parts of the contract means and why it affects you. Super big deal for me. But.
Yeah, I think that experience is not a unique one. I mean, most agents that start in this industry have never purchased a house on their own.
Right.
So, like, I mean, especially like for us being younger and in our 20s, like people look at us and automatically will assume like we don't know how anything works. But
Right.
I'm curious, like at the brokerage you were at, I mean, it's a pretty well-known brokerage. How many people would you say were in the office every day that probably felt the exact same way that you did? Like, how many agents do you think?
Yeah. I would say, I mean, at least 7.
I mean, that's quite a bit for people who are coming in the office every day.
Like,
And I only bring it up because, like, every agent is going to be different. Like, it doesn't matter if they're associated with some brokerage that you've known of for 40 years. Like, that doesn't mean they actually have a mentor and someone who's got their back, who's like answering all of their questions.
Right, yeah. And whenever I say 7, that's like people of all ages and like genuinely like just clueless. And like myself, unfortunately, was included in that group. And that's why I made the shift. So like, as fast as possible, just because like there wasn't anyone that was like truly willing to like sit down with you and like help you. They would just, like say like, yeah, I have something in place that works for me. That's what you got to do. I was like, okay, well, can you help me figure that out? It's like, I got a phone call. It was like,
Yeah, they just avoid answering any of your
yeah, like
questions
it
pretty
almost
much.
like it makes them feel good of saying like, yeah, I'll help you, and like here's this. But then it's like when you really try and like dive in, it's like there's not a whole lot of like guidance whenever you first like go solo. So
Yeah, and I think that's something that's important to talk about with our clients as well. Like,
mhm,
our clients experience this same sort of thing where maybe they're a first generation home buyer and no one else in their family has ever purchased, so they don't necessarily have someone of guidance to help them. And so choosing an agent that actually knows their stuff and has a team of people to help them if they are new is super important. As far as your clients go, I mean, do you feel like with the home buying experience, obviously that's something that many first time home buyers are new to, but like in
mhm.
general, what types of struggles are you seeing with your clients?
Understanding the timelines and what's the important ones to really focus on.
Mm-hmm.
Going under contract first 3 days. Earnest money option fee. That one's always probably the biggest one. They're like, like what's this for? What's it going towards? Why is it so important for 3 days? So teaching the clients the timelines and processes, that's probably the biggest one for me. But what about you?
I feel like my clients typically, I do work with a lot of first time home buyers, but also people who are maybe like downsizing or even like upgrading the size of their home. But it tends to be just like the emotions of the negotiation
Okay, yeah, that's a good one.
because, once we get into a house, like everyone is very excited to find the one that they're
Yes,
going to make an offer on. And then once we write the offer, it's like, oh my God, this is already overwhelming. This is so much paperwork.
right.
And then we go to inspections, and then you find out all of these things about the house, which I know I've mentioned on here before.
Hmm.
With inspections, it's like it's not a pass or fail thing, which a lot of people think. It's more of, okay, what issues does the home have?
Hmm.
It was built in 1980. Like, what things do you need to be aware of?
Right.
Right? I mean, typically all the homes are all in livable condition, but you may want to be aware of some things that you may want to like repair in the near future or in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that's where people really get emotional is they start to get all of this information and they're like, well, it seems like the seller should fix every single thing on this report.
Right.
And that's just not realistic because that seller's perspective is, well, I've been living here and that hasn't been affecting me. So why
Yeah.
should I have to repair it or whatever?
Hmm.
And so that tends to get really emotional because obviously they're invested in the home at that point and they
Yeah.
want it, and the seller typically isn't willing to do all the things. So I find that that's just really emotional in general, regardless of whether it's an investment sometimes or whether it's like your personal home that you're going to move into. It can just get really overwhelming.
For sure. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that's obviously the big things is going back and forth and seeing what you're actually buying and like what's actually going on in places you can't see. And it's always definitely an emotional time and something that I think definitely like, needs to be addressed up front for sure.
Yeah, and one thing that I was going to mention too, just kind of on this topic of like things that seem like they're going to be easy but actually end up being way harder.
Hmm.
I think in general, people think that the home buying process is a lot simpler. Like they know that it's complex and that it's kind of difficult because if they didn't, then everybody would be doing it.
Correct.
But at the
Yes.
same time, I don't think people typically realize like all of the moving parts that are involved. I know you mentioned earlier, like making sure they turn in their earnest money and option fee, which is something that we go over with our clients typically when we see a house and they're interested in writing an offer so they know how much money they have to have up front.
Right.
But I think like the bigger part is and something that I didn't realize is like our job isn't just finding them the perfect house. Our job is finding them the perfect house, and that's like a small sliver of where it starts. And
That's the
then
fun part. That's the fun part.
that's the fun part. And then once you're actually under contract, that's when like our actual job starts.
For
Like
sure.
I would say 95% of our job is that, where I think a lot of people think that realtors like they're going to blow up your phone and call you just to get you in a house and then after that they disappear, which is just not the case.
Yeah, and that was the biggest thing, like first starting out, that was like a struggle for me, was like I had the fun part, like the 5% or
Mm-hmm.
10% of, going to look at the house, finally finding someone that would possibly want to be interested in buying. And then I was so scared to like move forwards
Mm-hmm.
because I knew that that was like the deep end of the pool. Like I knew that we were just kind of looking at houses, having fun, finding houses that we liked, but I just knew that everything after that moment I was like very like incompetent in. And that was something that I wasn't really like wanting to address because I just told myself I'd figure it out when I get there and hopefully it all works out.
Yeah.
Um, but now I'm very glad I never actually got to that point because I definitely would have pissed my clients off for sure. For sure.
Yeah, and again, like that, you're not alone in that.
Yeah.
Obviously, our clients, I'm sure, feel the same way. Like they don't know what comes next, and
Hmm.
they're trusting us with like the biggest transaction of their lives.
Right.
So it's very important that we're educated and that we have the resources to find out more information if we are new in the industry.
Hmm.
And I think for me, that was huge, like joining the team and
Right.
having an actual mentor, having someone to, like, anytime I have any questions, it's like, how do I respond to this? What do I say to this?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to handle this conversation because I've never had to deal with people in this way before. So,
Yeah.
so yes, for sure. And so that being said, what other things do you think your clients are struggling with right now?
Um, that's a good question. Other things they're struggling with is finding out what they actually want and why they actually want it.
Okay.
So
So like wants versus needs type of thing, or
I would say that, and like figuring out like, everyone's like, oh, we're in an apartment, like I want to go get a house, 3-2
mm-hmm.
under like 250. And it's like, okay, but like why the 3-2? Like what function does that provide? And then like would 4 be better? Do you really only need 2 bedrooms? Like trying to just understand like what it is they're actually wanting to purchase. And sometimes we'll go through that entire like, list of questions and we'll go find the exact house that they like mentioned and it doesn't really look right. So trying to find exactly what they want and like understanding why they want that would be something that like um, not only like I find something that I need to like learn about, but for them, because sometimes you start asking them questions like, oh, like I don't really know like what it is I truly want. I just want like a house. So okay, well let's really dive in on what that looks like, and sometimes it gets to be a struggle. But I don't know if you've had any experience with that quite yet. But
I
what do you
would
think?
say yes and no. I
Mm,
think that most people have this idea of like what you mentioned, like I'm
mm-hmm.
renting right now and I want to buy.
Right.
They don't know how to get there, and typically their idea of what they want to buy is unrealistic
Okay.
for their first house,
Right.
because people typically in this day and age where social media is so big,
Yes.
their idea of what a first house looks like
Mm-hmm.
would be somebody's second, third, fourth, fifth home, because they're using the equity that they got from their first home and using it to purchase the next one. It's like you can't go into a brand new house,
Mm-hmm.
on an acre,
Right.
3-2 modern farmhouse vibes,
Yeah.
2,000 square feet outside of town for 250,000. Like
Right.
it's just
Yes.
not realistic. But people are seeing other people on social media,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that there's a lot of expectations that are put on like society as a whole
Right.
about buying a home and what they should be doing. And so I think that for me, what I find a lot of times is that's what's happening, is the expectations are just not accurate enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to have them look at a home, maybe one or two that they're interested in, get them to a place where they can see like, okay, I would be interested in these types of homes,
Yeah.
then get them to a lender, and then the lender has to say, okay, well, these are your numbers. Are you wanting to max it out and spend, $2,500 a month, or do you
Mm-hmm.
want to scale it back? And they're typically like, oh, crap, I didn't realize it was going to be that expensive, right? And they
Yes.
scale it back, and then we start looking at other homes, but it begins to get difficult because, like, you've already seen the champagne, and now you got to go back to beer.
Right.
Like, it's not fun to have to
Yes.
do that. And so that's why, obviously, everybody says talk to a mortgage lender first, run your numbers first, but that is the reason why. But I think a lot of it is expectations and trying to get people on board with what you're explaining to them can be difficult,
Yeah.
in our industry, especially when You know, it might be a random person that's just been looking on your website and they don't actually personally know you.
Right.
So, yeah, expectations is really big. Have you ever had a client that seemed to have really unrealistic expectations and then just made like impulse decisions based off of that? Or what's your experience been?
Yeah, I have a current client at the moment who's looking for something super specific and super cheap at the same time. So it's very difficult trying to find the exact home that she's looking for within the budget that she's in. She's wanting a standard 250, but she's also wanting like a 2,000 square foot house. So pretty similar to what you just mentioned. She doesn't want to do a whole lot of work to it. And in today's day and age, like that's not necessarily what you're looking for in 250 price range. I think if she were to go to like 275, she'd be perfect. It would find exactly what she needed. But obviously, that's not what she wants to do. So that's not what we're doing. We're kind of just waiting to see if there's anything that's going to be listed anytime soon or anything that may be, an option for her. We're kind of just on hold for now, like just looking at the market, not rushing anything. She's not in a rush to move, so obviously I'm not in a rush to like find the one today. But we've definitely looked at all options. There's nothing that really excites her too much, but I wouldn't say they're unrealistic, but they're also not super realistic either. That kind of like makes sense, I guess.
Yes, I've seen that a lot with clients who tend to be older. Like they feel like, well, maybe they are renting this house, or maybe they have friends or family that purchased a house 10 years ago. And so they have expectations in their mind of like what they should be getting for a certain price range. But also at the same time, like a lot of these people, if they haven't purchased at a certain age, there's typically reasons for that, right? Either they were trying to climb the career ladder, or maybe they were moving around a lot. And so I think that there's a lot of issues also on like just having more of a fixed income, and like maybe not fixed income like someone's retired, but more like, okay, you can't really do much more with your income right now.
Right.
This is what you can afford right now. And a lot of people aren't satisfied with that, because I think, again, like with societal expectations, they're
Yes.
like, well, I'm this age, I have this family, like I should be in this kind of house.
Right.
And they're not satisfied with, what the realistic property would look like. They're like, well, I'd rather just rent, and I'd rather look like I have a better house if I'm renting than trying to buy something.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Is there anything else as far as like being on like the realtor side of things that was much harder than you thought it would be?
I think honestly, like the timeline of getting paid, that was way more difficult than I thought it would be. Like I knew obviously from trainings when I first joined the team, the timeline from when you make an offer with a client to the timeline, or to the day that they get the keys and the closing date happens, that's typically around 30 days. So I knew that meant I could be working with someone, and from the time we make an offer, it's going to be 30 days until I get paid.
Right.
But I didn't really realize like how much you have to, I guess, like desensitize yourself, or like detach yourself from the work that you're doing every day to your paycheck. Because
Yes.
when you're working an hourly job or even salaried job, like you show up for 8 hours a day and you're going to be paid, like guaranteed. You're going to be paid for your time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you're spending that time. Whereas in real estate, if you're not being productive, you will not be getting paid. That's just how it is. And the problem is you're not going to see those results for 30, 60, 90 more days.
Right.
Until you get down the line. So like everything that I was doing when I first started, I would say the timeline was a little different then, because COVID was crazy. And
Right.
it was easy to get a loan at a 2% interest rate. So everybody was doing it. But nowadays, like if you're not putting in the work,
Yeah.
3 months in advance, you're going to see the results of that.
Right.
And I don't think people realize that. Like, I don't think our clients realize that. I think a lot of times they think we're hourly employees, that we're getting paid to show them houses. And the reality is we spend so much of our time being unpaid until we actually make an offer with them. We're actually under contract. And even then, you can still terminate the contract if things don't work out, if you're unable to get through negotiations. And so it's just a really, really long lead time to getting a paycheck. And I think it's just one of those things where you have to just be productive with your time. And if you're not consistently every day coming in, trying to provide value to your clients and trying to find ways to help people, then it's not going to work out for you. You can't just, sit on your phone all day.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy is like you don't like even if you are productive every single day for a week straight, like you'll never really know if that makes a difference until like you're seeing the benefits way down the line.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if you're productive for a couple days, you're like, oh, like nothing's changing. Slack off for a little bit and then like be productive again and then slack off a little bit and then be productive again. Like you're never gonna get ahead. And it's crazy because the delayed gratification is like such a crazy thing that comes from this industry is because again, like if you're not doing the same thing every single day for months on end to be super consistent, like you're never really going to get ahead. You may do all right, but I feel like you're never going to actually like be that person.
Yeah, and it's hard to determine like what you're supposed to be consistent in, like what
Mm-hmm.
is actually bringing you business.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, something that I started doing at some point last year is like my goal every single day was to have 10 new real estate conversations with someone.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean I'm talking to 10 people who are looking to buy tomorrow. It just
Right.
means I'm talking to someone about real estate, answering a question, trying to provide them value,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hoping at some point that comes back to me.
Right.
And that for me has been pretty consistent
Mm-hmm.
in bringing me closings every month, which is that consistent income that most people are looking for in
Right.
real estate.
Right.
And at the same time, allowing me to help clients on a consistent basis, which I
Yeah.
think is also important in our industry because sometimes you have agents that, may go 6 months without actually helping a client.
Mm-hmm.
And like everything in this industry is like muscle memory, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
I would say, I mean, you can speak on your experience with this, but like if you haven't done a deal in a month, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to feel like a whole like new thing when
Mm-hmm.
you start again.
Right.
Is that what you've experienced?
Yeah, so when I first joined the team, I was super consistent and I had 2 deals under contract within like a couple like months of joining. And then I went on a business trip and then like a family like personal like vacation trip. And I had no idea the backlash I would have for the next like month or two
Yeah.
because like I just barely got this train rolling. You know, it takes so much effort to get a train rolling, but once
Mm-hmm.
it's moving, it's moving. And I just got it to where it was like actually making progress. I was super excited about the 2 deals and then yeah, then I took like 2 weeks off, 3 weeks off. Like it was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And then came back and I was like, what am I doing? So I had to restart all over. All the people that I was having conversations with, I had to regain those relationships, which I didn't know. It's definitely a learning moment,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I definitely 100% experienced that. It was unfortunate because I don't know like where I could have gone within those timelines. If I like did stay consistent, I don't know if it would have been a lot more of a consistent, transaction period. But yeah, it was definitely something that I learned the hard way, unfortunately. But I learned a lot on the trip. I had fun with my family, so I don't regret it by any
Right.
means. But I definitely do wish that I either, front loaded my prospecting and learning about people before I left and then maintained those relationships while I was gone and then continued when I got back. But instead, I just kind of, did some work, left, and then came back and then just started kind of doing some work. So
Yeah.
definitely a learning moment for me, but I definitely experienced like going like a month or two without like looking at anything. And it felt weird, like going back out there, like setting appointments, all that stuff. It was definitely interesting, but something I don't plan on doing again. So
Yeah. You lesson learned, right?
for sure.
And I think our clients can probably relate to that some as far as like being consistent in the actions that you're doing if you are interested in buying a house or planning to make a move at some point in the future. Because it's not about like the things you're doing 3 months before you want to move. It's about what you're doing a year before you want to move.
Right.
Like, are you actively watching your credit score and making sure that you're getting it to a place that is going to be like the highest that you can get it, right? Are you paying down your debts? You're paying your credit card on time. Like obviously everybody has things in life that comes up where maybe you miss a payment or whatever, but like you have to be consistent in everything that you do in order to move forward and really reach the goals as far as like creating, I guess, what I like to call like generational wealth with real estate, even with that first house. So I don't know. I mean, if you had any recommendations for someone looking to make a move in 2025, what would you tell them?
Don't buy expensive stuff you don't need,
Ooh,
and stop spending money on just stupid stuff. Those are pretty much the same thing, but that's a very big one. That's my like main thing is like don't go out and like buy some boat on a loan just because you can afford the payments, you know, or buying a whole lot of furniture just because you're expecting to move at some point. Um, I know a couple people that like will just go out and just buy random stuff just because like the payment's not super crazy.
Right.
And it's like, don't do that if you're wanting to make a move later and like, qualify as strongly as you can. That would be probably like some of my biggest things. Just don't overspend if you don't need to.
Yes, totally agree with that. I can share my own experience.
Okay.
Whenever I graduated from college, I went out and bought a Dodge Charger 392 because
Yeah.
I needed it. I
Yes.
needed it. It was brand new when I bought it, and I needed it. Yes, I do love cars, okay, but did I need it? Absolutely not. Especially when my parents were helping me with a very new other vehicle at the time that was very capable, but I decided that's what I wanted, and then moved out on my own. Had a loft in downtown, and yeah, thought I was the shit. I
Yeah,
had
you're
new
getting it.
car,
You're
new
getting it.
place, brand new job, and then I took a really hard look at my life, at like my job at the time, corporate life, and I was like, I cannot do this for the next 50 years.
Right.
So if I'm going to completely pivot my career and my life, I'm going to have to make some big changes. So I ended up selling that car because I thought, like, if I'm going to have a house payment, it's going to be at least as much as this car payment. And it's kind of insane to have a house payment that's the same as a car payment.
I would agree with that. Yep.
So I got rid of it, like, I think a year after I bought it. I ended up selling it for, like, what I owed on it.
Okay.
And then bought a car, like a $15,000 car that lasted me, 4 or 5 years. And then, while all this was happening, while I was selling the other car, I was buying my first house, and my payment was like $950.
Wow.
So, like, it just put things into perspective for me of like, okay, if I'm going to spend this much on a house, you can't be spending that much on a car.
For sure.
And if people
For sure.
don't have anything to relate it to in their everyday lives, like, it's so easy to get carried away, especially with vehicles nowadays,
Yeah.
like how expensive they are.
Yeah.
But also with other stuff, with like subscriptions and credit card bills, and just like spending more than you have in the bank. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't have it in your bank, should you really be purchasing it? Is kind of my thought process.
Yeah.
But yes, I would totally agree. And I think the second thing for people to consider is try to save as much as you can. Things are expensive right now with how everything is going. And it can be difficult to start putting money away and to start saving. But I would definitely start putting away as much as you can. I typically like to recommend, $7,000 to $10,000 for a first-time home buyer would be a great nest egg to
Yeah.
start with.
Yeah.
You don't always end up actually needing all of that to purchase a home, but like at least you have it to buy furniture or to do repairs or to do upgrades or renovations. Like, you're never going to go wrong by saving more money.
Yes. Yeah.
I just don't like when people are like, oh, well, I've only got, $6,000 or $7,000 saved. I'm going to give myself a whole nother year.
Right.
Like, I'm going to renew my lease and then give myself a whole nother year to save when, like, they don't even know. They haven't even talked to anyone about numbers or, like, what they could get right now.
Right.
And, depending on their financial situation, it might be the right move to move right now. But
Yeah.
you just have to be open and willing to talk to the experts in the industry.
For sure. For sure. I think something else that's not necessarily like money related, but if you're thinking about moving to a certain area, maybe being like super in tapped with like the growth, what part of the town you want to be in, really tracking like actual spots within the community that you're planning on going. Because again, if you do save up all this money, you're being super smart with your financials, and then you like want to go buy something, and then you end up in the wrong like spot. It's like you don't feel like this is actually where you want it to be. I think that would be a good thing, is just to like watch the town, watch the growth. If you have kids, watch the schools, just kind of see what they're all involved about, and really just like have a good understanding of what it is you're looking for. Because I feel like a big struggle is either the money to pay for it or like not finding the right one. So I think if you can focus on like that and being super financially responsible, you'd probably set yourself up pretty strong whenever it actually is time to, do the thing.
Right. And of course, a realtor can help you with some of those things as far
Mm-hmm.
as location goes, but we can't tell you what's going to be the best neighborhood for you.
Right.
You're going to have to do your own research. And, to that same effect, things now are a lot easier to find information on. Like back in the day when you had to go to a realtor so they could look in the binder to find you the current listings.
Yes.
Like, yeah, you had to rely on us a lot more to look at properties and set expectations and, find information about different areas. But now all of that is online, which is why it's such a small part of our job now. Because a lot of times people come to us and they either already know what they're looking for or they just,
Right.
they need to work up their finances to get there.
Right.
But yes, do research, get involved in different Facebook groups and community groups and, search stuff on online forums. I find that that's usually pretty helpful for my clients.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think you're right.
Okay, well, I think that's probably all the things we can think of for now.
For now, yeah. I'm sure there's about 30,000 more out there
Yeah.
but for now, I think that's about it.
So we tried to do this episode a little bit more casual, to be a little bit more conversational. Would love to hear you guys' feedback, so feel free to comment down below or shoot either of us a DM. Our social media links will be in the description. And of course, like always, if you guys have any questions at all about real estate or becoming an agent, you're welcome to reach out to us or shoot us a DM on Instagram.
Yep. We will see you on the next one.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. We hope you found something useful or at least had a good time listening.
Yeah, if you enjoy this episode, feel free to subscribe or share it with someone who might enjoy this content.
And if you have any questions or topics you want us to cover, reach out to us on Instagram. Everything will be linked below for you.